Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we are helping the world experience what's possible. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the authors of one of our newest books. This one is called Gifts of Wisdom, Practices for Healing and Empowerment. Before I introduce the authors to you today, we have to say a really big thank you to David McLeod. David is the lead author of this Gifts of Wisdom project. David, we wouldn't be here without you. I'm so grateful for your big mission and vision for Gifts of Wisdom, this stellar group of authors that you brought in around you in this beautiful community. This book has power, y'all, and you're about to hear some of it. So I have Denise Lefevre with me. She's been a yoga therapist for almost a decade and owns Lavender Om Wellness, where she helps clients find joyful movement and ease with relaxation practices. Frank Byram is a scientist, inventor, and writer-author, and has spent the last 4 decades on a spiritual journey, the last few of which have been focused on deep self-healing and serving clients in establishing their daily rituals and practices. Jeanette Stewart is here. She's an angelic practitioner and self-care strategist at Angel Angles and Wellbeing and Wonder, who empowers clients to live with more love, joy, and peace each day. And Lina Orlando has been guiding courageous souls through their journey to awaken since 2007. I can't wait to share all of you with our listeners today. Denise, you're going to start the party off. Tell us the why behind your chapter.
Hi, I'm Denise, and I wrote Chapter 5, Yoga Nidra, an intention to relax and ease the mind. And my why is a quote from the chapter, actually, realization in my mid-50s that I was too young to feel so old. And I spent most of my life as a closet yogi. And when I was at an all-time low, I decided that the last time I felt really good was when I was doing yoga regularly. And so my story became about that journey. And if you had told me 10 years ago that what I would write about was my yoga journey, I would have said no, because I thought my previous active life was much more interesting. But I've learned to relax, and I'm thankful for David and you, Laura, for making this possible.
I'm just smiling at some of the things you said about aging and also getting on the yoga mat. But Denise, I don't know. I've never done yoga. How could I do that now? How could I start yoga now in my life? Give us a little taste of why we should dabble.
Okay, well, most people think yoga is getting into pretzel poses. I don't teach that kind of yoga. That's what I did when I started at 16. But coming in at my 50s, I was kinder to my body, especially when I realized it didn't move like it used to. So I gradually, and it took a while, got into accepting the subtler practices of yoga, meditation, breath work. And my favorite class to teach is chair yoga and include chair yoga dance. So that makes it more fun if you want some active practice. You don't have to be pretzeling, or you can just take a deep breath.
I love it. So is it this version, is it yoga nidra or nidra? I can't remember how to pronounce that.
I've heard it pronounced both ways, and because I'm not very good with words, I say yoga nidra.
Okay, that's one of the forms of very gentle yoga that I
Yes.
absolutely fell in love with just for the meditation aspect, really.
Yes. And
Yeah.
what I really love about it is a normal practice can go from 20 minutes to 45 minutes. I work 1 day a week at a hospital with oncology patients, and I take segments of that practice and just work with people that are feeling anxious, and it's just transformative.
So there's yoga in one deep breath. I'm just rewinding to you talking about taking a deep breath. You know, tell me more about how I make my breath a practice like that.
So one of my favorites, because yoga has a whole field of pranayama, which is nothing but breathing practices. One of my favorites is one that doesn't require a lot of thinking, just doing. You can inhale through your nose and exhale through your mouth with pursed lips as though blowing out a candle. So it's an inhalation and then blow out your candles. And the effect of that is it extends your exhale, which enables you to switch from the sympathetic fight or flight nervous system into the rest and digest nervous system, the parasympathetic.
I love it. I hope everyone was breathing just now when they were listening. I love that. We're going to start this day off with a little miracle morning here, aren't we? Denise, thank you so much for being in this project. Thank you for being here today to share with everyone.
Thank you, Laura.
Frank, tell me about the why behind your chapter.
Well, thank you. First of all, let me thank you, Laura and David, for putting this project together. It's amazing, amazing group of people. My chapter 17, it's starting again, a spiritual practice for moving from collapse to hope. And I think the why is sort of the how. I went through a really trying time in my life a few decades ago, and it lasted 4 or 5 years, a lot longer than I had expected it. And the question was how to get out of it. How do you get out when it feels like life collapsed? And is there hope? And afterwards, I just kept getting asked that question. How did you get out? And is there still hope for me? And that hope could be in putting their finances together or relationship back together, or is there something future worth looking at? A new job or career. And that question just kept coming up from people who had heard some of my story. And so the question is how. And I think ultimately the how is the back to basics. It's that ritual and practice that we start with as a daily foundation. And at some level, even in my deepest low, I believe that there was some future blessing. There was something better. And I work towards that one day at a time. And I kind of help folks do that.
You have me thinking about 3 or 4 different things all at once here, but I want to go to the mindset one has to have and practice and be faithful to, time goes by, a year goes by, then it's 2, then it's 3, then right. And then the hope starts to dwindle. So how were you waking yourself up in the moments to stay with the practice?
That's a great question, because I think the reality is we both wax and wane in our practices. And part of that is giving ourselves the self-love we all deserve. That's the first part. We have to have grace with our practice. While discipline is important, I think sometimes grace is far more important. And really, it's really establishing a ritual. My alarm goes off every day at the exact same time, and I do my ritual, even when I'm on vacation, even when I'm off. It feels like part of me now. And I had a teacher one time said, if you do it long enough, it's just like your skin. You don't do it without it. And in fact, it sort of disappears in the way you do it. And I'm training the martial arts, and we say, act like the tiger, be the tiger, become the tiger. There is no tiger. There's a point when it's so integrated that it's just part of your day. And ultimately, if one is dedicated, that's where they'll get to. It'll just feel like right to you. You'll look forward to that hour alone or 30 minutes alone every day for your ritual and practice.
Oh, I would second that in the beginning, it might feel harder, but then as you get into the habit, the positive, amazing, energizing habit of it, you'll miss it if you don't get to do it. Frank, let's back up to what self-love looks like in your world. If I was going to peek in your window beyond your beautiful morning practice, you might be in a stuck point for any reason, any day, and you just pause and you're like, all right, Frank, self-love, right? But what does that actually look like in your world? What do you do? What do you say?
Well, that's a long question, but let me see if I can give you a short answer to it. I think, the background there might help people understand. I grew up in Southern Baptist, sort of very Christian world. And, it's a very judgmental world. It's a world that has a lot of rules. And after you get past your growing up years into adulthood, those voices are still in your head. Those rules are still there. And, I can hear the voices of my parents even today. And, sometimes I have to remember that that's where they were and that's what's going on. And I will find myself like literally like listening, going, no, that's not my voice. That's not my heart. That's not what I'm saying, right? That's mom or that's dad. And I'm not saying they were bad. They were absolutely amazing people in their own right, but they had a very different view of the world than we have in modern times and whatnot. And I think ultimately you start there. You start looking at what domesticated you and what was those original social and family structures that were there. And little by little, I call them word spells because they kind of stick with you, right? They're kind of like a spell. They're the closest thing to a modern spell, like a Harry Potter spell we have, right? And you kind of have to replace it with a different one to say, now that yeah, I needed that maybe when I was a kid, but now I don't need that anymore. Right. And you replace it with the love spell, which is, nope, I'm doing okay. Or nope, I don't practice that anymore. Or, you replace it with a different one. And after a while, you know, you are the tiger, and then you forget. The spell kind of goes away. But ultimately, the word spells are probably the worst thing I think that we do as a society put on each other. And they can all be broken. And I completely believe that and love to help people do that.
Frank, thank you for being here and being in this project and sharing all of this today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Laura.
I hope you all hear the golden nuggets of awareness. So far with the two of you, like this is not small potatoes kind of stuff. This is life-changing kinds of things. And we spend a life mastering this kind of awareness. So much to talk about. I know these questions, we could be going 3 hours on any of these questions for all of you. Jeanette, tell me about the why behind your chapter.
So, Laura, I wrote chapter 3, your word of the year, how to curate the life of your dreams. And it was based on my experience for the last 9 years of selecting a word of the year and how important that is in my daily life. And like Frank, I have a morning practice, and if somehow I'm not able to do it, I really miss it. And I just don't feel complete without it. And no word of the year was more important than in 2019, 4 days into the year, I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And my word of the year was flourish. And so every day, many times a day, I would ask myself how I could flourish. And I was so grateful to have this tool of the word of the year that my friend Becky recommended to me. And I didn't understand the why, like, why would I have that? But it's become such an important tool in my life. This year, my word of the year is reverence. And so I'm looking for reverence all day long, and finding it in people, in nature, in experiences. And it's just so transformative for me. So I thought this would be a great opportunity, because it's a simple tool. And sometimes the most simple things are overlooked because sometimes we think in our minds, oh, it can't be that easy. Um, we love to complicate things as humans. That's my why, because it worked for me, and I I've been doing it for 9 years, and I can't imagine not selecting a word of the year.
Well, I love that you're going after Frank and his word spells. And now you're going to be talking here about choosing your spell, your love spell, right? Your word. I think I would have trouble choosing only one. How did you come to reverence? How do you pick?
Well, I have a process, and that's the tool that I wrote about in my chapter.
Okay, we'll have to find that out, won't we? All right.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but it's fun because the word selects me. Um, and right now I know what my word's going to be unless I change it for 2025. Do you guys want to know what it is?
Ooh, yes, we do.
So it's going to be savor, SAVOR. So I'm going to look, how can I savor this moment? How can I savor this experience? How can I savor this beautiful dessert I'm going to enjoy? You know, um, that's how I'm going to live my life next year.
I love it. What juicy words, too, all of them. Flourish, reverence, savor. They're palpable. They've got that thing about them that allows you to feel it in your body, which is part of the magic. And so, oh, I just want to do a ditto on the importance of, you get to choose. With awareness, we have a choice, and we can make that focus something that serves us, of course. Right. And Jeanette, you're doing this with the word, and I just love it. I'm in love with that. Anything else you want to tell us about it?
That uh, I mentioned it before, that it's a simple tool and sometimes it's overlooked because it's so simple. But it's something, and if you find you want to change your word, maybe you want a word of the month, which is what I've done in my business. Also, we have a certain word we focus on each month. So you can make it yours. Just take the recommendation and change it up for your life and what works for you.
I love that. You're just helping me come to, teams could have a word of the quarter, and we could wrap, some strategy or teamwork around a word of the quarter. Jeanette, thank you so much. Thanks for being in this project and being here today.
Thank you, Laura. And it's so great. You get to see some of my amazing co-authors. It's just, David put together such a great group. So I'm in awe.
It was one of my words one year.
Great.
All right, Lina, tell us about your why behind this chapter on wisdom.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Laura and David, for putting this project together. And of course, my fellow co-authors that are here. It's just so wonderful to hear everybody's stories. But my chapter is 13, and the title of it is The Power of Oneness, Living from Love and Transforming Relationships. And why I wrote this book is because, much as Frank said, I grew up Christian, Catholic. I was under a spell. I called it under a programming. I was completely programmed to believe God was outside of me, that I was a sinner, there was something wrong with me. And I spent most of my life attempting to live into this idea of perfection that I was programmed to believe was perfection. And the reason I wrote this chapter is because I had an incredible experience that began to awaken me about 22 years ago. 5 years into that journey, I had an encounter with the divine, which at the time I didn't want to call it God because I didn't like God, because I grew up with a wrathful, hateful God. But then I had this encounter with the most loving essence. And I was literally exposed to the truth of who I am. So the spell, the programming disappeared. I mean, it just was not even there. All that was left was the awareness that I am one with all that is. And then began the journey of not only teaching others, because I was transforming, I began to teach others, and I began to realize that we all go through this journey, and all of these authors are sharing how aspects of their journey. So the why I wrote this chapter is because I was teaching people how to come to know God. But the truth is that we are the essence of that. And for so long, I was helping people strip back who they're not. And it was time for me to share that that encounter that I had is natural to all of us. We are born knowing that we are the essence of the creative source. So I had to write what we are by sharing the story, the experience that I had that helped me remember that.
Okay, you have this moment, and you now have a truth that is completely life-changing. Does this happen so that you wake up the next morning and everything's different and you begin to, it's like, was it an instant shift? I'm trying to figure out what I want to ask you. Was it instant, or did it take many months for you to integrate that new knowledge of who you were? Give me a little window into the path.
So yes and no. Yes, it was instant because in that moment, everything that I knew was completely turned upside down. And no, because it has taken me, that was almost 20 years ago. And I am still feeling effects of the expanded awareness that I experienced. It's as if I've had to go on this journey. It's like a spiral staircase. I was at the bottom feeling totally lost. And then in that instance, I went to the top immediately. But then life happened. The programming, the spell just kicked back in. We all have this egoic aspect, which to me is the spell. So I had to undo the spell one experience at a time. I had to encounter people, relationships, situations where my old thinking would kick in automatically. And then I had to make a different choice. I had to shift and lift. I would shift and drift down into the lower levels of that spiral and go into my fear-based programming. And then I had to lift myself back up to, okay, well, what did God say about this? I used to think, well, what would Jesus say? What would, Gandhi say? What would somebody that I revered say? And then I just went straight to the top. What would love say? Which is to me, what would God say? So I've had to train myself over all of these years, and I'm sure for the rest of my life, I'll continue to do that, to shift and to lift back to the truth. So it's been a process, but it was instantaneous awareness that everything had to change.
Yeah, that's a really exciting story, really. And I think the mark of a master is that they stay in that beginner's mindset. So all of you are there. You're walking the walk of awareness. And then in these moments over your life, and you were having to remember, it sometimes for me, it's like, how fast can I ask myself that question? What would love say? What would love do? Like, oh, and not getting stuck in the other thing too long. I would imagine, Lina, you don't get stuck too long these days.
Not too long, but I used to be stuck for decades, lifetimes, I would say, then decades, then years, then months, then weeks, then days, then now. It's too uncomfortable to be there. So I love myself too much. As Frank was saying, it's a process of self-love. I love myself too much to keep myself all tangled up and uncomfortable and tight and tense. It is just not, why would I do that to me?
Lina, thank you so much for being here to share about this.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. It's fun to listen to all of you talk about these topics. A huge thank you to all four of you. You took my challenge to put your heart and souls onto those pages in your stories. And then for the reader, you're stepping up as a master teacher and giving them an experience. And I'm so grateful to all of you for saying yes to the challenge and then doing it so brilliantly. For our readers, you're in for a huge gift in gifts of wisdom, many gifts. And what I love so much about the collaborative way that we do this is we all need all of your unique voices and ways you express what you express. You're going to say it in the way that somebody needs to hear it. Your unique way of saying it, right, is what matters. And I'm just so grateful to all of you. So, Frank, I'm coming to you with this next one first. When you think of the wisdom you've acquired over the years, what do you think was the most powerful nugget for you in your personal life?
Oh my gracious, that's a big question.
I know these are big ones.
That's a big one. So everybody else gets to cheat a little bit so they know the question coming.
Yeah.
Um, I think the most powerful and maybe the hardest lesson to learn is that idea of I'm human. right, in the end. And so for me, the discipline was maybe easier than some. I had the all the domestication from my early childhood training, and yet I'm human. I have human emotions, I have human feelings, and just accepting that, and accepting that sometimes I do show up like I want to, and sometimes I don't, and the grace to do that. Yet I was telling a friend just yesterday, my heart's made of flesh, right? It's not steel. And so in loving yourself, I think that's the greatest thing you can do is say, yep, I'm human. That's an absolute human emotion. And you know what? Okay. What's going on? Why did I feel that way? And you can get curious about it, but ultimately just, hey, I'm human.
Thank you. That is one of the golden nuggets. I know it's hard to go first sometimes on these, and it's really hard to go last on some of these questions. So, Jeanette, you get to go second. When you're thinking of the lifetime's worth of these nuggets of wisdom that you've acquired, what do you think is the one that stands out for you?
Well, for me, it's using joy as my compass when I'm making decisions. Because for so long, that was not even on my radar. It's like what I should do, not what can I do that could bring me joy in this moment. Which also goes into Frank's things about self-love, because I love myself so much now, um, that I can choose joy instead of, oh, I need to be the perfect wife, perfect mom, perfect worker. So the realization that we're here for a short time and that joy is our purpose. It's one of my favorite quotes, that we are joy. And I think that was really huge for me. For so long, I lived with the realization that I just needed to prove myself. And now I let joy guide the way.
I love it. It's another big golden nugget. Joy is my compass has been one of my mantras as well over the recent years.
Awesome.
Okay, so Lina, how about you? We've all lived these lifetimes worth of these nuggets of wisdom, so many. I know all of you could have listed 20 each, right? What do you think is that one that stands out?
I would have to say immediately was recognizing that all of us have two voices within: the voice of love, the voice of fear, the voice of God, the voice of the ego. And when that became clear to me, my process to shift out of the old conditioning became, it just was accelerated. And I've noticed that, I've been coaching for almost 20 years. So I have thousands of clients as examples. And when they get that just, it all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, that was my ego talking. From that moment forward, it becomes so much easier to practice that self-love, to be gentle. We are humans. We are divine beings having a human experience. But until you can become the observer, the presence of awareness that is aware that you have this egoic voice, then our ego just gets spiritualized, and we remain in that space of still not acknowledging that what we are is God expressing, love expressing, consciousness expressing itself. So that distinction between those two voices, to me, is what is absolutely the line in the sand that transformed my life.
It's a big one, y'all. It's a big one. So many big ones today. I love this so much. This is these kinds of conversations change lives. The discernment in my awareness practice is what you're making me think of, and that's another topic that we should probably write an entire book about. Denise, tell me the answer for you on this. What's one of those nuggets of wisdom that stands out as most important on your journey?
I think hearing my fellow authors helped me refine what I was thinking of initially, but I think for me, the word comes to judgment, and it's judgment of ourselves living the human experience, which then causes us to judge others. And I love the Ram Dass expression, we are all just walking each other home. It's finding that compassion for ourselves and others, that in my mind, if I can't relinquish or at least be aware of that first, I can never get to Jeanette's word of the day. And so it took me a long time to even imagine I was worthy of a word of a day when judgment was clouding my vision. So it's a little aspect of what everyone else is saying, but that's how it's summed up for me.
Yes, a good job adding to, this continued topic. And isn't it so great to hear the additions that judgment is when you're all talking about awareness, when you're observing the thing that is aware. It's hard to talk about these concepts. You have that gift, and when you catch yourself in judgment and you pause, you have a gift, right? And you're all talking about different forms of this. I remember one of the biggest introductions for me was Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, that book. And they did the book club with Oprah on that. And so I tuned in faithfully every single week to listen to these awareness topics. And it was life-changing. It's life-changing stuff. Okay, Jeanette, the experts and authors in this community, we all have different ways that we practice this awareness, this connecting to that essence, to that bigger place, which is one of the ways I believe experiences turn into wisdom. Would you share about one of your personal practices? We heard about your word of the year. How else will I find Jeanette connecting on the day-to-day?
Most the easiest way for me to connect is to be out in nature, and it could be even looking outside, watching the hummingbirds at my feeder, looking at the beautiful flowers in my neighborhood as I walk around. And Lina said it, being one with all that is. And sometimes I'm just like overcome with that sense of love. Before I used to walk around my neighborhood and think, why don't they mow their lawn? Why don't they pull their weeds? Why don't they paint the house or whatever? And now that I've been focusing on looking for the good and looking for joy, I'm, encountering my neighbors and having experiences with them. And you get so much clarity being out in nature, putting your feet on the ground, being near a tree, listening to water. It's a huge way to raise your vibration, make yourself feel better.
No doubt. It's one of my favorites. The birds are amazing. And tuning into the sounds, smells, all the things. I love that one. I would imagine all of us have a little bit of that one. Yeah, I think in the community in general, we all talk about that connection. I think sometimes with all of our technology, I know a younger generation has gotten into the habit of a lack of nature connection. And I see that as a huge problem. I remember going to the creek to play, not sitting on my iPhone, right? Like there's such a difference now, and they're going to suffer without that. We have to get our kids out into the dirt and the streams and the trees, right? Lina, how about you? If I was going to peek in your window at that practice, one of your practices, because I know you all have many, what would that look like?
It would have to be and this would be along the lines of what Denise shares, I had to begin to get comfortable with my body, with my breath, with meditation. Through this process, I realized that my head was filled with too much confusion, too many conflicting thoughts, and my heart, all it knows is to love. So how do I move from my head to my heart? I began through breath practices, through meditation, to begin to cultivate a relationship with my body. And I realized that my body is neutral. It doesn't lie. It doesn't have an agenda. And when that became clear, then my practice is simply to recognize, am I tight and tense, or am I at ease and at peace? And if I am tight and tense, then I know my head's in control. I've got thoughts going on that are causing me to go into judgment, go into fear, go into, feeling superior or inferior. So then the practice became so simple. And this is why I can shift out of my discomfort so quickly, because I immediately feel the tension, because through meditation, I have practiced to keep my mind so quiet that if the rumblings start, I can very quickly just go into the place of breathing and letting myself know, okay, I love myself. I'm having as Frank said, I'm having a human moment, but that's not just all that I am. So how can I be more of this loving one with all that is, and then extend that love? It's just, my body doesn't lie. It never lies. I trust just that feeling of expansion or contraction.
Yes, I love that so much. Your body is a very quick, powerful place to go. This could be a whole nother topic for another day in terms of why that's so important and how we need to help people who have had trauma to come back there. Don't get me started on this topic right now. It's a big one, but if you heard that message today and you haven't really been back in your body, starting with the breath is so nice. And I'll say easy, right? It's accessible. You have to breathe. You're alive because you're breathing, right? So deep breath. I love it, Lina. Thank you. Denise, for you, if I was going to peek at that practice, what would it be?
So it's a relatively new practice, Laura, and I'm going to piggyback on what wisdom others have shared. When you're someone that grows up with a sense of judgment, practices can be another thing on your to-do list. And yoga is really good with that, because yoga will also tell you need to do X amount of movement practices. You need to do your meditation. You need to do your breath practice. And somewhere when the pandemic hit, I was overwhelmed with not being able to get out and meet people. So I took an online course on intuitively playing the Native American flute. And that has become my go-to practice. I go out on my deck, I play with the birds. I have several different flutes tuned to different frequencies. I try to pick the frequency of the bird, and I ground myself and we just communicate. And that just has brought so much joy to me.
Oh, how fun. That's a new one in these interviews so far. When I sat on the bus coming home from, we were on a ride home back to the hotel in Peru. They had somebody who was a flute maker and musician, and he hopped on the bus with us. Yeah, you're making me have a little flashback of that moment. And so, of course, while we were driving, he played, and he had, I don't know, 3 or 4 different kinds of instruments, from small to humongous. And it was just like the biggest gift ever to listen to that beautiful sound. I love that, Denise. Cool. I'm going to have this picture of you now fluting to the birds.
Yeah.
All right, Frank, how about you? Tell us about one of your practices.
Well, I think, yeah, I can really relate to what everybody else said and love the nature of peace. And that's where I start my day. I go out. This time you're in the pitch dark. The sun's not up. There's a pond behind the house. It's completely dark. I don't even turn a light on. But I do have the thing that has become my cue in life. And I love tea. I love good tea, from around the world. And so, yep, start with my tea in the morning. And it's a practice of meditation. I smell the loose leaf tea. I feel the cup in its warmth. I taste it. I smell it again, and it's really trying to bring me to that moment. And the reason the cue is important, and among many other ones, is later in my day when I'm in the office and life isn't going so well, or someone is, project isn't quite where I want it to be. I go get a cup of tea, and it reminds me to stop and touch the cup and smell the tea and come back to the moment and come back to myself. And when I can do that, I can do exactly what everyone else has said. I can find that love in me. I can not run into the ego going, how dare they? I can come back and say, no, no, I can do those things that I really want to do to show up. But tea has become my cue. Now, if it's later in the day, I might do decaf because otherwise I'll get super wired. But the reality is it's a cue. And I take it with me everywhere I go. I always travel with a tea bag for that reason. So if you're a little nervous or it's not going well, I go to something that's quite frankly healthy. But it's a cue that it starts from the repetition every morning to know to stop, take the breath, and come back to myself. So there's something that people can do. It's really simple to do. But anyway, I love what everybody's saying because I think we could all kind of hang out about our practices.
For sure. And I love that one. I love all of them. And that one too, for the reason there's multiple senses involved in that. And the more you can get your body involved in feeling in all the ways, smelling and tasting and touching, right? Hearing, the better. And that helps me pull into my moment, even sometimes as simple as keying into the sound of the house air conditioner. Like it can be that simple, you guys. Like, okay, what am I hearing? Let me just close my eyes, right? Take one of the senses out and see if you can use your ears. These are powerful, powerful practices, all of you. Really amazing. And of course, there's hundreds of ways. So I want our listeners to understand, you find something that works for you and you can try lots of different things. You're going to find so many practices in the book to give you an experience with so many different wonderful things. I can't wait to share that book with everybody. I've got one more question for all of you, and it's another big one. So good luck answering this in 30 seconds that I'm going to give you. We're going to do the speed dating version of this, but I think you guys are up to the task. Lina, what's that last bit of message, last words you want to give to our listeners to help them thrive on this journey?
I would say is, oh goodness, how to pull it down to the one thing. In my chapter, I share that my experience is not unique to me. Connecting with the divine is not unique to me, that if I can do it, anybody can. And I am now a grandmother, and I'm watching two little ones. One is 3 years old, one is 7 months old. They are the expression of God. They are absolutely living as that. And if we can all remember that we came in from that place, every single one of us is pure love. That is what we are. We have learned to forget that. We have become trained and programmed, and we're in these spells that we're not. So the one thing that I would love to encourage everybody to take away from these conversations and from our powerful book is that what we have each experienced and what we share, and if it's true wisdom, it's because it's universal. Everybody has this already in them. If we can do it, so can you. We're just sharing how we came to remember. And that is because it's that knowledge, that wisdom is already in each and every one of us.
Beautiful, powerful message. Thank you for that. Denise, what's your version? What's the last message you want to leave our listeners with?
I think Lina eloquently summed it up so well. So in those moments when we remember our birthright or need to remember our birthright, if we're feeling overwhelmed, I just offer the opportunity to pause, breathe, and just feel what's within.
It's that simple and powerful. Thank you. Frank, how about you?
I'm going to build them the same. I think we could just build this answer together. Lina, Denise, and Jeanette will finish us off here. Here's the thing I think is that, Lina mentioned this sort of staircase, and we go up and down that staircase throughout our lives. And sometimes it does feel like collapse. I don't want anybody to leave this discussion or this book believing that collapse is the last chapter, that there is hope and there are ways to move from where you are to a different part, to those blessed days. And even the oddity is sometimes you believe it and take steps towards it and it shows up. And just one day you say, hey, wow, this is blessing. But my sense is, yeah, there is hope. And I don't want anyone in this world to feel hopeless.
Thank you for that message. Jeanette, you're going to help close out this session today. Tell us your last message.
So the message that came through is that we came here for a specific reason. And if I can be the Jeanettest Jeanette, and Frank can be the Frankest Frank, and Lina can be the Lina-est Lina, and Denise can be the Denise's Denise, and Laura can be the Laura's Laura, we would be so happy, and we would live in our purpose. And just remember that you came here for a specific reason, and just to shine your light the way only you can.
Oh, you guys make my day today. To all of you, thank you so much for what you do in the world. And thank you for being here today to share it with everyone. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you for having us.
So,
Thank you.
So, listeners, this is way more than a book. This is a generous, badass community who is ready. You might have a question, you heard something today, you need a little support, you're curious, you want to continue these juicy conversations, drop down into our show notes below the video. I have everybody hooked up with their contact information. You can reach out. This is a community of people who really care about that next step. And I'm so proud of you all for being part of this community and for being the generous, heart-centered, amazing people that you are. Listeners can also join us for the book launch party. We're going to have that on October 10th. I've got information down below about how you can find the Zoom. And please go over to Amazon and grab your copy of this amazing book. Could be a life changer. Lastly, today, everyone, remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone.